Booktube, and welcome to a new video. It's another tag video. It seems like only yesterday I filmed a tag, and that's indeed because it was. And the reason for this is because Mark over at Book Time with Elvis churns out a lot of tags, and he tags me. Although the one I filmed yesterday, he didn't tag me, so I feel I've got a bit more time to upload that, but he's tagged me in 2 of his last 3 videos. This is a somewhat autobiographical tag, which was uploaded on Saturday. We are now 2:45 on Saturday. This is my instant response to it. But just before we get into the tag, in my previous video, which was, I think, another Mark tag related video, I had some comments from Steve Donahue and others about the chaos on the shelves behind me. So, sorry, on the shelf singular, and I pointed out that these are my son's books on a mixture of sport and he's studying to be a psychological carer, so there were some psychology books and stuff. And I'd always said that when he leaves home, hopefully he'll be taking those books with him, and I could reclaim the space for my non-fiction. But because of your complaints, well, not complaints, because of your comments, I've decided to act early, and if my son comes back and discovers his books, which I have filed neatly in his room on his bookshelf, which I had to totally reconstitute, but if he's not happy with the decision, I blame you, Booktube, because I've gone early on this. So just very quickly, this is now my non-fiction reference shelf. And I have reclaimed the shelf that they were on up here for women's fiction, which now has 3 of my 2, 4, 5, 10 shelves dedicated. Okay, so that was just a quick by the by. Okay, on with the tag. What was the #1 best-selling book, fiction and or non-fiction, on the day you were born, and have you read them? Or like Mark, I delved back in online to the New York Review of Books, and the #1 fiction book was The Group by Mary McCarthy, which is a book I think Sean the Book Maniac read quite recently and really liked. I haven't read it. I have no intention of reading it. It's interesting that only 5 books topped the charts throughout the year 1964. There wasn't as much churn as I suspect you get today, presumably because of marketing and stuff. And as for non-fiction, it was Profiles in Courage by John JFK, which I haven't read either. 2, what are some books, series or standalone, that immediately spring to mind when you think of your childhood? Well, I didn't read in my childhood. The only books I would pick up were Asterix and Tintin, but I mean, I just didn't read proper books. I read some sort of football magazines, and that was about it really, so none. 3, school days are the best days of your life apparently, but there you were forced to read some books you maybe wouldn't have chosen for yourself. Which did you enjoy? None, again. I mean, yes, forced to read. Reading at that time in my life was not a voluntary pursuit, so one of the earliest books I read was Stig of the Dump. Then we read Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence, which was enough to put anyone off fiction and literature. And this is the crazy thing, because I knew I wanted to do history at A-level. Economics sort of was a sort of a natural fit to go with that, and I didn't know what my 3rd subject was going to be. And in the end, sort of by sort of default really, I sort of went into English literature, even though I wasn't well read. And there were 3 different papers. The first one was Shakespeare, and we did Lear and what was the second one? Othello, which I quite enjoyed, but I really messed up the exam, because the more you delve into Shakespeare, the more you realise how complex it is. Paper 2 was Chaucer, Chaucer and Milton. I didn't particularly like Chaucer, but I loved John Milton's Paradise Lost. That was the only one of the set texts that I really, really enjoyed. And then paper 3, which is sort of drama, poetry and modern fiction, was Tom Stoppard's Jumpers, which I hated, Sylvia Plath's Poetry, which I hated, and Jane Austen's Emma, which I hated. So why I did English literature, I don't know, other than there was no other obvious subject for me to do as my 3rd A-level. When I went to my son's A-level choices, I don't know, what, 6, 7 years ago or whatever it is now, they had a lot more choice, like psychology, like social science, things like that. But that wasn't available when I was a student. 4. Were you independent or part of a pack at school? Did you join in the reading fads of the day or do your own thing? Well, I wasn't reading, so in that sense, I was independent because I didn't read. At school I just wanted to play football, so in that sense, I was part of a pack because you need other players to play. 5. As you moved into your turbulent teens, can you remember your first experience encountering sex in a book? I suspect it was the Force Reader Sons and Lovers. I couldn't swear 100% to that, but it probably was. 6. What were some of the first kinds of non-fiction you encountered? Well, like Mark, it was history books, really. Of all the subjects we studied, for some reason you had to read around it and read these books. So I guess I did. I will say though, for my physics O level, which is the exams you take at age 15, 16, I was hopeless at physics. Again, I sort of defaulted into it. It was biology or physics, and I was too squeamish to do biology and dissection of rats or frogs or whatever it was. So you also had to do a lot of drawings of things, and I was hopeless at drawing. So those were the reasons I gave up biology, which meant I had to do physics, and I really didn't understand physics. And in the end, I just basically because I have pretty much an eidetic memory. I used to, probably not now. And I just memorised my physics textbook. I literally learned it like you'd learn French vocabulary or Latin grammar or whatever. And I got a grade B, which I was, of all the O levels I took, that was the result that pleased me the most. And the crazy thing is that as I've become a writer, I've got more and more interested in physics. And I buy books on the subject of my own volition, admittedly popular science, not the really detailed techie stuff. And I've even gone to the extreme of I went online to Amazon Marketplace and bought a copy of my old physics textbook because it fed into something that I was writing. So I mean, how crazy is that? Come full circle. 7. Whose bookshelf was more fun to raid, mum's or dad's? Well, the first thing to say is they were a joint. They didn't sort of separate their books. And I wasn't interested in reading enough to see which of them was reading what. And also, where the bookshelf was placed was we had stairs from the ground floor up to the bedroom floor, but there was a landing in the middle where it sort of, you went upstairs, walked on the landing, then up the other set of stairs. And the landing is where the bookshelves were. So every time I went upstairs to my room, where I spent most of my life as an early child, these books were supposedly calling out to me, and I resisted without any feelings of guilt at all. And I always remember whenever it was the parents teachers night and my parents would come home and I'd get what for, because it was clear that I needed to read books in any art subject, and I didn't really. And my parents were always sort of saying, there's the bookshelf, go and pick up a book. And I would idly go and finger a cover just to show willing. And there are things like Dennis Wheatley, Leon Uris, these sorts of writers. I never read any of them. I just sort of pretended I had. Yeah. So how diverse is your library? By which Mark means in terms of different genres of book, and provides the list from Goodreads. He did say how many different categories there were in total, which I now can't remember. But I've counted up ones that I have, and it's surprisingly high because I hate genre. It's 12 of the categories, but that is swollen by the act of me buying my old physics school book, because it would have been 11 without that for sure. 9. What types of books do you find difficult to discuss? None, except books written by people I know or contemporary writers, because I have to coincide and coexist with them. And if I've slagged off their book, it could be quite, fall back on me in a comic way where they or their friends gang up on mine. So I do find it very difficult talking about books by contemporary authors, British authors, I would say. I don't think it really matters what I say about American authors so much, because they're not sort of, it's a different market. So I'm wary about sort of people I know or people I know of who produce a new book. But even so, it's not as bad as when I used to write stage plays, and I used to go and watch actor friends in their first nights, and that was harder because you were physically in front of them and you had to say, you know, what you thought of their play. And normally you sort of say, well, you know, it's not a great play, but you were very good in it. Okay, 10. In what way does your life experience and emotions shape your choice of reading? Well, I am a mood reader, but I don't have great fluctuations of mood. I'm pretty level on an even keel. So, but yeah, I pick up a book and I feel I'm in the mood for it, or I order a book and it arrives and I decide I'm no longer in the mood for that book then and there. So, yeah, it does influence me, but not in a sort of hard and fast way. 11. In much the same way as our taste of food changes, so perhaps does our taste in books. How would you say your own reading tastes have evolved over the decades? I've just become aware of, I mean, I didn't study English literature at university, so I haven't got an academic background of all the various, literary theories and different trends, movements, I suppose, in literature. So, I never read the moderns, Joyce, Woolf, except under my own steam recently, because I never studied any of these people. So I think it has widened. It's got more mature, hopefully. So I never would have read any postmodernism at all. I wouldn't even have heard of the likes of Coover and Barth and these types of writers. But discovered, I've got quite, the one thing my university degree did provide me, even though it wasn't in English, is that you learn your way around reference systems and you pick up on things, a reference in a book, you pick up on it to lead you to another book. And I've applied that rather than the history in which I studied it. I learned all that stuff to literature, and that's why I discovered people like David Markson and Ben Marcus and stuff. So in the last 10, 15 years, my reading has finally come home to the sense of I found books that I really, really like and know why I read at all, I think, really, as against... Sorry about that, my memory card was full, so I had to ditch some stuff. Okay, 12. Unfortunately, we all feel down at certain times. Have you got a go-to book to raise you back up? I think if I was really down, I don't think reading would redeem me. So I don't have a go-to book. And I don't really read anyway. So, again, they're between the two of them. No, I don't. 13. If you have to choose one book or author to represent each decade of your life, who or what would they be? The book should be ones you read in that decade, not necessarily published in that decade. Okay, well, I'm going to, 0 to 10 I wasn't reading, so I can't give you for that. In my teens, it was La Peste and L'Étranger by Albert Camus. They were the books that got me into reading, quite simply. In my 20s, it would be Hubert Selby Jr.'s The Room. In my 30s, it'd be Don DeLillo's Underworld. And in my 40s, it'd be my own debut novel, A, B and E, which was published in 2009. And then in my 50s, David Markson, This Is Not a Novel. So you can see that I was reading very much sort of male authors like DeLillo, like Hubert Selby Jr., like William Burroughs, probably into my 30s. And it's really in my 40s and 50s that I've really expanded, including reading women. And the last 2 of the last 3 years, my favourite books of the year have been by women. Last year I didn't really award it to anyone, but previous to that it was Milkman and Valeria Luiselli's The Lost Children Archive, which are two of my favourite books. 14. Of course, everyone's entitled to their own opinions. But how do you feel when people say reading is boring? And what would you say in defence of reading? Well, I can't answer this because when I bang on about how boring golf is, what would I expect a golf aficionado to say back to me to dissuade me? If people feel that strongly that they opine that, you're not going to dissuade them. Especially the only way of dissuading them is to give them a book and say, go read that and come back. By the time, even if they comply and they read the book and come back to you and say, well, yeah, I was blown away, it could be 3 to 6 months. It's a strange question, this. I don't really understand it. 15. What was the #1 selling book on the day of your most recent birthday? and have you read them? So in fiction, it was the first book in the Bridgerton series by Julia Quinn. And in the non-fiction, it was Obama's A Promised Land. And like the ones at my birth, no, I haven't read either. No, I have no intention of reading either. It's hardly surprising because I don't read books at the top of the charts in the same way as I don't buy music that's at the top of the charts. Because I'm not into commercial art, really. I'm into interesting, fringe, marginal art. At least interesting to me, anyway. I haven't read Obama's A Promised Land, but it seems to me a problematic title because that's all, to me, you know, as someone on the outside of America, that's all that Obama did was provide a symbol of hope and a promise. You know, he didn't deliver anything really, and directly led to Trump as the sort of the counter attack to what people thought he represented and stood for. Now, you can't blame Obama for people misinterpreting what he stood for and the out-and-out racism behind a lot of that. But you can blame him for really not getting the job done. But I feel this about a lot of recent American presidents, is that they're symbolic. You know, people vote for them because they seem to represent something, rather than expectation of them carrying out legislative change that will affect people's lives. It's a strange sort of disjunction between the two. And Trump, unfortunately, sort of represented sweeping away of all of that. And he too was symbolic to his supporters, you know, because he was a charlatan, businessman, hustler, millionaire. So what does he have in common with a guy on a Kentucky farm? But somehow they put their faith in it. So he was also symbolic. But one of the things was he was going to sweep away all the previous stuff. And he tried his hardest, to be fair to him. I mean, he sowed utter chaos and discord. Which, you know, I think was very damaging to the US. But in a way, he was the most true of recent presidents in trying to legislate to deliver what he promised. So it's all, I don't really understand American politics on that level, presidential politics, because you seem to vote for the people who have the biggest groupings of support around them because they inspire hope that's never going to be delivered on. Anyway, so I got a bit political at the end there. So thanks to Mark at a Somewhat Autobiographical Tag. No, that's the name of this tag. Thanks to Mark at A Book Time with Elvis. Till next time.